as expected, opinions are all over the place. Let me make sure that my audio works because I rushed to start this. Yes? Okay. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Yeah. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. Your spirit. All right. Okay, excellent. Yes, okay. Wonderful. Yeah, the opinions are all over the place. And so pro-CCP outlets like the New York Times were quick to call it a total defeat for Trump and a big win for Xi Jinping. Meanwhile, many anti-CCP commentators and media outlets insist it was Xi Jinping who completely surrendered, while Trump walked away with huge gains. And of course, plenty of people think both sides got something out of it, with one slightly ahead depending on how you look at it. So what really happened? Let's go through the latest updates and some key moments from the talks. Well, by the way, welcome to Laser Talk. So if you haven't subscribed, well, this is a channel that talks about China. I tell you not only about what's happening in China, but also why it's happening. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to do so. Before we dive into the serious stuff, allow me to start with something lighter, because I can't help. Okay, so this was the first Trump-Xi reunion in 6 years. And keen China watchers like myself couldn't help but notice Xi Jinping seems to have grown taller. Let me make this, here you go. Can you guys see? Yeah? Okay. So take a look at these two pictures, one from 2017 and one from 2025, just yesterday or today. Now, Trump is 6'3". That's 190 centimeters, while Xi Jinping is 5'11", or 178 centimeters. So Trump is 4 inches taller than Xi, but now they look the same. So did Xi Jinping wear platform shoes, or did Trump shrink a little? You be the judge. Okay, so let's go back to the summit. What exactly was agreed? Let me get rid of these pictures, or maybe I'll keep them on. All right, so let's talk about what was agreed. So to understand who actually gained the upper hand, we need to compare both sides' official statements. Let's begin with Beijing's version, released today by China's Ministry of Commerce. So the Chinese version says that point number one is about tariffs. It says the U.S. will cancel the 10% fentanyl tariff on Chinese goods, including those from Hong Kong and Macau, and extend the suspension for the 24% reciprocal tariffs for another year. And China will, quote unquote, adjust its counter tariffs accordingly, if there's any. And both sides will keep certain tariff exemption measures. And then it went on to say the U.S. will pause for 1 year its export control rule announced on September 29th, the so-called 50% rule. Now, just a little background information on that 50% rule. It's the rule that allows the United States to expand its export restrictions to any company that is 50% or more owned directly or indirectly by an entity already on the U.S. export blacklist. So this effectively closes loopholes that allowed banned firms to use subsidiaries to access American technology. And so the Chinese Ministry of Commerce continued to say that China, in turn, will suspend its own related export control measures for a year and study a detailed plan. This is very subtle language in reference to its rare earth export ban. The language is intentionally vague. And then it says the U.S. will suspend for 1 year its Section 301 investigation into China's maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sectors, and China will do the same with its countermeasures. And the Chinese statement also said both sides agreed to cooperate on fentanyl control, expand agricultural trade, and resolve specific business disputes. It did not mention purchase of soybeans. So they reaffirmed the results of the Madrid trade consultations with the not Madrid, Malaysia. They reaffirmed the result of the Malaysia negotiation with the US making positive commitments on investment and China promising to properly handle the TikTok issue. So those are all very, very vague language. So overall, Beijing's statement made China appear to be the winner, using soft, vague language that downplayed its own concessions while highlighting those made by Washington. Now, the US version is very different, right? Trump, on the other hand, sounded very pleased. He accepted the interview while he was on Air Force One. He said the meeting went extremely well, joked that if 10 points meant perfect, he'd give it 12. So the US summary focused on a couple of 4 key areas. The rare earth, China confirmed it would delay its rare earth export, or export controls, I should say, for 1 year. And then US Trade Representative Greer emphasized that Beijing would not reinstate its previous rare earth restrictions. So it's a clear win for Washington. And on agriculture front, China agreed to immediately resume purchases of US soybeans and other farm products. And then the US Agricultural Secretary confirmed that China would lift unreasonable tariffs on most American agricultural goods. And there was a concrete number that they provided. So over the next 3 years, China will import 25 million tons of US soybeans annually. That is slightly below last year's 27 million tons, but it's still substantial. Fentanyl. Xi Jinping promised to intensify efforts to stop the export of fentanyl.
Varsinkin kyljellään nukkuvat. Tein melkein elämäni tyhmimmän virheen. Sain tämän muotoilun tyynyn nimeltä Derilla Ergo, mutta rehellisesti sanoen olin valmis palauttamaan sen. En odottanut, että se todella auttaisi minua niskakivuissa, mutta ennen kuin ajoin lähettää sen takaisin, ajattelin kokeilla sitä, sillä olin jo tuhlannut älyttömästi rahaa perinteisiin tyynyihin, jotka luovat raon olkapään ja niskan väliin niin, että niskasi jää kellumaan ja lihastesi on pysyttävä jännittyneinä koko yön vain pään vakauttamiseksi. Sieltä niska- ja selkäkivut tulevat. Mutta kaverit, hemmetti, tämä on mukavin tyyny, jota olen koskaan kokeillut. Kävin makuulle ja minusta tuntui kuin niskani ja hartiani vihdoinkin rentoutuivat. Ei ikävältä tuntuvaa rakoa, ei kipua, ei rasitusta, ei aamujäykkyyttä. Heräsin kivuttomana ja todella levänneenä. Silloin tajusin, en aikonut vain jatkaa tyynyn käyttöä. Minun piti saada niitä enemmän ystävilleni ja sukulaisilleni. Soitin tukeen heti, että hei, pääsenkö vielä mukaan tuohon 70% alennusdiiliin? He selittivät minulle, että normaalisti tämä alennus olisi jo loppunut, mutta he ovat tehneet pienen virheen ja alennusdiili onkin taas voimassa. Ilmeisesti tyynyt olivat keväällä täysin loppuun myytyjä, mutta kesälämmön tullen he panikoivat ja tuplasivat tuotantonsa, koska tyynyssä on jäähdytyskerros. Nyt heidän varastonsa on aivan täynnä ja heidän on tyhjennettävä tuotevarastot nopeasti. Niinpä he tarjoavat tämän älyttömän alennusdiilin. Mutta kun heidän varastonsa palautuu taas normaaliksi, tämä diili on ohi. Ja voit luottaa sanaani, Derilla ei ole vain yksi kontuurtyyny muiden joukossa. Sen ainutlaatuinen muoto kehitettiin eurooppalaisen huippututkimuksen perusteella 3 vuoden intensiivisen tutkimuksen ja testauksen jälkeen. Niskalihaksia rentouttava teknologia, olkapään kaari, tukisivet, huipputekninen nano, memory foam materiaali. Tämä tyyny kohdistaa toimenpiteensä juurisyyhyn. Mikä parasta, se ei anna kehosi kompensoida ylikuormittamalla muita lihaksia. Kaikki on linjassa niskasta varpaisiin. Aamulla ei ole kipua. Ikinä. Silloin tajusin, meitä kaikkia on huijattu ajattelemaan, että meidän on vaihdettava tyynymme 6 kuukauden välein, koska se menettää muotonsa. Ei, juuri siihen suuret tuotemerkit haluavat sinun uskovan, jotta jatkat ostamista. Derilla Ergo säilyttää muotonsa vuosia ja antaa sinulle todella tarvitsemaan tarvitsemasi tuen. Täydellistä mukavuutta joka ilta riippumatta siitä, kuinka nukut kyljellä, selällä, vatsalla, sillä ei ole väliä. Sen jälkeen kun aloin käyttää tätä tyynyä, herään pää kirkkaana ilman kipua ja oloni on todella levännyt. En edes tajunnut, kuinka surkeita vanhat tyynyni olivat ennen kuin tunsin, millaista todellisen tuen pitäisi olla. Ja tässä sinulle tarjous. Vasta nyt saat Derilla Ergon hämmästyttävällä 70% N-alennuksella. Ja kyllä, he tarjoavat jopa ilmaisen antibakteerisen tyynyliinan. Tämä yksinomainen tarjous koskee vain videon katsojia, joten sinun on toimittava nopeasti. Etkö vieläkään ole varma? Sen mukana tulee elinikäinen takuu ja 30 yön ilmainen kokeilu. Etkö pidä siitä? Lähetä se takaisin. Älä vain ole typerä kuten minä. Kokeile ensin.
The export of fentanyl and show real action. So in return, Trump agreed to cut the fentanyl tariff by 10%, so lowering overall Chinese tariff from 57% to 47%. So this 47% comes from earlier Trump tariff of 27%. That's the average, right? Average 27% tariff from Trump's first term, plus 10% fentanyl tariff, the remaining 10%, and then the 10% base tariff applied to all countries. So that's where the 47% comes from. And then on export controls, the US also agreed to suspend for 1 year its planned export restrictions on subsidiaries, the so-called 50%, what's that? The 50% link, the 50% suspension, the 50% restriction, I'm sorry. So that is, the 50% rule announced on September 29th. So the US will suspend that for a year. So in summary, the US essentially traded a 10% tariff reduction and a 1 year suspension on select export restrictions in exchange for 5 things. 1, China delaying rare earth export controls and the promise that it will never fully roll out the export controls the way it was announced a few weeks ago. And number 2, buying massive quantities of US agricultural products. Number 3, enforcing fentanyl regulations. Number 4, agreeing to sell TikTok. And number 5, accepting the 20% additional tariffs that Trump imposed in his second term without retaliating, because we haven't seen any retaliation from the Chinese side, right? So in other words, the Chinese have willingly accepted the 20% additional tariffs Trump has imposed, 10% for fentanyl and 10% the general tariff. And beyond trade, Beijing also made 2 quiet geopolitical concessions that are important. One is Xi Jinping promised to help mediate the Ukraine war, and China is reportedly close to a major energy deal to buy oil and gas from Alaska. And number 2, neither side mentioned Taiwan. This is a striking omission, given how much Beijing wanted to tie trade talks to Taiwan policy. So if China starts buying large amounts of American energy, it automatically reduces its dependence on Russian oil, something that would put real pressure on Putin, even if it doesn't stop those purchases completely. And skipping the Taiwan issue is essentially striking. In the past, Beijing always tied US-China trade deals to Taiwan, pushing Washington to move from not supporting independence to opposing independence. But this time, Xi Jinping let it go. So, who won? If you add everything up, Trump's modest tariff cut and partial export pause in exchange of China's 5 major economic concessions and 2 strategic ones, the answer seems pretty clear. The clearest signs of this reversal are Beijing's abandonment of the rare earth card and the Taiwan card. Those are the 2 most significant ones, because they were both long viewed as China's toughest bargaining chips, especially Taiwan. I mean, since the Clinton era, or at least Obama era. No, I think Clinton era. The CCP has tried to use trade concessions as leverage to gain U.S. tolerance for its plans toward Taiwan. This time, that long-standing strategy quietly disintegrated. And in his speech, Xi Jinping backed down. He used friends and partner, or friend and partner, to describe the United States. This is something we haven't heard for a long time since he came to power. And also, him and Xinhua News even made references to Trump's mega movement. I think Xi Jinping said it at the event, and then Xinhua reported it. So Xi Jinping basically said that China can coexist with mega. That's something. So okay, so let me tell you about the meeting. Well, it's a surprisingly short meeting, right? Before their summit, many people expected a long and tough meeting. Even Trump himself said that it might be 3 to 4 hours. But in reality, the entire meeting lasted only 1 hour and 40 minutes. Now, if you subtract the opening remarks with the press, if you subtract the translation pauses and the time for small talk, the actual substance of the talks probably lasted around 45 minutes. That means the nearly 10 major topics were covered in under an hour. And that averaged, 4 to 5 minutes per issue, per topic. No more than 6 minutes per topic. So what does that tell us? Xi Jinping basically accepted everything Trump proposed, almost without pushback. So there wasn't much back and forth debates or negotiation. So it was more like Trump raised the point, Xi Jinping responded politely, and then nodded in agreement, and that's it. So the meeting went on so smoothly that many people doubted whether it was even real. And this is the reason why Trump was so thrilled afterward that he rated 12 out of 10, right? So the verdict is the United States came out on top. But some of you may say, the CCP has broken promises before. Why should this time be different? Good question. Can Beijing be trusted to honor a deal or the deal? Well, there are two key points for us to consider. One is this deal is only valid for 1 year. It must be renewed annually, meaning that both sides will review how well each has delivered. So we will quickly know whether Beijing will honor the agreement or not. And if either side fails to comply, I mean, in this case, it would be the Chinese. If Xi Jinping fails to comply, the trade war can restart immediately. And they know, and Trump will start it immediately. They will know. So, and then the second point is, will Beijing keep its words? That depends on the situation. So historically, if you look at CCP's behavioral pattern, they only honor agreements when they're in crisis mode. When I say they, meaning CCP leaders. When they feel weak or cornered, they cooperate. But when they feel strong and confident, they break promises. Right now, for Washington, this deal is important, but not existential. But for Beijing and CCP or Xi Jinping, it is a matter of survival. The regime is in a crisis mode. So if talks collapsed, China would be cut off from the new global trade order. It would be a death blow to its economy, to its already struggling economy. So, faced with a choice between wolf warrior defiance and strategic surrender, Beijing clearly chose the latter. So now let me talk about Xi Jinping's odd demeanor at the meeting. Let me play a short clip because I watched this last night, very late last night or early this morning. Where did it go? Okay, I muted the audio because it's yeah, this is, hold on, let me just go to this is Xi Jinping's entourage. Oh, here we go. Look at his security details. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable, the amount of people. Anyways, what I want you to watch is when, okay, here we go.
Mr. President, the President of the People's Republic of China.
Xi Jinping does not look confident.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Me too.
And we're going to have a very successful meeting, I have no doubt. But he's a very tough negotiator. That's not good. We know each other well.
President, do you plan to sign for me as well to meet you?
Okay, this is the boring stuff. So let me come back. So did you notice that Trump greeted Xi Jinping warmly and was talkative and lively? I mean, he was saying things like, "Oh, he's a tough negotiator," but Xi Jinping was dull looking and only said two things. One was "glad to see you again," and the other is "me too." That's it. That's all he said. And during the photo op, Xi Jinping stood stiff and expressionless, almost like robotic, in sharp contrast to Trump's upbeat body language, right? And Xi Jinping also seemed to avoid eye contact. And also Trump patted him on the back in a show of dominance, and Xi Jinping looked uneasy. And his face, if you watch, I mean, the resolution of this video isn't great, but I mean, there are many versions of this video online. You could watch them. Xi Jinping's face looked heavy, drained, and gloomy. Even some Western experts noticed it. They could tell something was off. But given what we now know about the deal, it's obvious why Xi Jinping's mood was dark. It was quite literally a surrender under pressure. And inside the meeting room, footage from the summit showed that Xi Jinping, hold on, let me play, maybe I could play this. Let me play it. Xi Jinping constantly was reading off of two A4 sheets in front of him with large prints or extra large. They were printed in extra large font. And he was reading. Throughout the meeting, he kept his head down, reading from the paper, occasionally glancing up at Trump. And Trump occasionally showed he was impatient because Trump kept looking at Xi Jinping. But Xi Jinping looked away. I mean, was just staring at the paper. Anyways, here's the video. Trump stared at him, but Xi Jinping was looking at the paper. Anyways, let me pause that. So why did Xi Jinping suddenly back down? Well, it appears that China's foreign policy took a dramatic U-turn in the past several days. If you remember, just 20 days ago, Xi Jinping was in full wolf warrior mode, right? He announced the global export control on rare earth. And he has been suspending all soybean purchases from the U.S. And Trump hit back just as hard. He raised tariffs by 100% and introduced a global software tariff or ban. I think it was a software ban. And then days before the summit, Trump doubled down again. He announced the resumption of nuclear testing. And he also reopened the 2019 trade deal under the new 301 investigation, basically digging up old disputes. At that point, you'd expect Xi Jinping to respond, blow for blow, but instead he made a 180-degree turn. He ordered 3 rounds of massive soybean purchases, and just one day before the summit, told his team to buy another 12 million tons of American soybeans within 2 months. And during the Malaysia trade talks, he agreed to all U.S. demands, delaying rare earth controls, restarting agricultural imports, and tightening fentanyl export restrictions. So it's very strange, isn't it? Some people may say, well, that's just Xi Jinping. He's done many U-turns before, like with zero COVID lockdowns. Remember, he made 180-degree turns. That's true, but in the past, Xi Jinping only backed down after a major crisis, like the white paper protest. He abruptly ended zero COVID lockdowns after the white paper movements broke out across Chinese campuses. So Xi Jinping didn't change direction out of goodwill. That's just not him. So what on earth happened? Has Xi Jinping really changed? I don't know what went through his head, but I know one event took place before his turn, and that is precisely the 4th plenum. Looking at his blank, distracted expression, does it look like genuine change out of his goodwill? Or was he forced into this position, right, as the result of the 4th plenum's internal power struggle? So I think the CCP leadership collectively decided to return to Deng Xiaoping's old policy or old strategy of hiding one's strength and biding one's time. So therefore, Xi Jinping is forced to deliver the new direction and is forced to read from a script. And that's why he's now singing praises to MAGA and emphasizes friend and partnership and coexistence with the US. It's not his own idea, but it's something he must deliver, since he's still playing the role of the chief commander, the president, and the party head. Now, there are 2 details worth noting. One is about 45 minutes before the meeting, Trump suddenly announced that US would resume nuclear weapons testing. And that was, I think it's 45 minutes, because the post on Truth Social was like 9:11, a quarter after 9 p.m., which is about 10:11 in Busan, South Korea, and that's 45 minutes before their 11 o'clock meeting. So that's why I said 45 minutes. So it was a clear act of pressure before the talks. Yet during the meeting, Xi Jinping didn't respond to that, to the nuclear testing that Trump announced. I mean, it was clear, it was very clear. 45 minutes before your meeting, your opponent announced that they're going to resume nuclear testing. But Xi Jinping let it go. And instead, he praised Trump for his contribution to global peace, citing Gaza and the Thailand-Cambodia ceasefire. So, I mean, if he wanted to, he had plenty of time to adjust his speech, but he didn't. And that's something very unusual for Xi Jinping, right? Who's known for striking back at any provocation. And the second point is the location of the meeting. That was also symbolic. Their meeting didn't take place in a grand hotel, but at an air base in Busan. It was inside a military building. And there was no joint statement, no press conference afterwards. When the meeting ended, Trump walked straight to his Air Force One, parked right outside, and flew off. Now, this base was once a major U.S. transport hub during the Korean War. It's now managed by South Korean Air Force. But the U.S. military still shares its facilities with the South Koreans. So it means that Trump was in effect on home turf by hosting the meeting there. Now, Busan has plenty of luxury hotels suitable for this type of meetings. So the meeting at a base wasn't just a matter of convenience for Trump. It was a deliberate power move by Washington. For Trump, it was easy. Finish the talk, board the airplane or Air Force One, and then leave. Even the reason I say this is that even Korean media noticed. They pointed out that this was the first time in history a Chinese leader had met a foreign head of state on another country's military base. So the message was unmistakable. Trump was saying, I can meet you, but it's on my terms, at my time, and you come to me. And so did Trump really have such a tight schedule? His plane could have waited 2 hours, right? So I don't think it was about logistics. It was about power dynamics. The unspoken message is you need me more than I need you. So to summarize, okay, here's my summary. The 10% tariff for 1 year of rare earth in exchange for 1 year suspension. No, 10% tariff reduction in exchange for 1 year suspension of rare earth export controls. On paper, it looked like the balanced trade, either side taking a step back. But in reality, it was a deeply asymmetric bargain. The U.S. concession was just a number on paper, cutting tariffs from 57% to 47%, right? Something Washington can easily raise again at any time. But China's concession, on the other hand, involves giving up half a century of strategic leverage, its control over the rare earth lifeline, plus massive soybean purchases. They are tangible and costly. So the short-term results is obvious. The U.S. keeps its defense industry running by having the access to rare earth, and its supply chains stable and its farmers paid. China gets a bit of breathing room, maybe a 5 to 10% more export flexibility. But the leverage is gone. Supply chains keep moving out. There's no question about that. And allies keep their distance. So at best, it was a temporary truce. It's a pause in a long, grinding war of ideology, strategy, and endurance. Now, the real issues that truly matter in Sino-US relations are what they didn't discuss. They are Taiwan, South China Sea conflicts, and the advanced chip ban. They were not discussed because they're not negotiable, and they define the real issues between the two countries. And Trump went home. Xi Jinping stays in South Korea to attend APEC. He's met with South Korean protesters who are sending a clear message. Actually, here we go. Okay, yeah, here we are. And these people are holding banners that says CCP out. And some even hold banners saying, heaven will destroy the CCP, like 天灭中共. It's quite a scene, yeah. So I want to end my program by telling you about a bizarre twist. The People's Daily misprinted Xi Jinping's name in its coverage of the South Korean summit. And it's hilarious. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but here we go. They call Xi Jinping Xi Jinhu, a typo that went viral because the name sounded oddly affectionate in Chinese, almost as if Xi Jinping were cozying up to Trump. 近乎, right? Xi Jinhu. The editor, a recent college grad named Ma Yuhang. People find a picture. I think this is him. This is a young man who is holding important roles at the People's Daily. Now, he was identified in an internal hiring notice as the only top 20 recruit without a master's or the doctoral degree. Yeah, so there was the People's Daily published their recruit list, the top 50 recruiters, and he was number 19. And if you look at that list, everyone before him had either a master's degree or a doctoral degree. So he's the only one with only a bachelor's degree. So this fueled speculation that he came from a privileged party family. So that's very interesting because in China, mistakes like this usually result in the immediate dismissal of both the editor and their supervisor. And then I want to share with you this picture, which is very sad. It's a sad picture. I don't know if it's real or it was created by AI, but the picture is loaded with a heartbreaking message or heartbreaking messages. It shows ordinary Chinese people's life in China under CCP. They're totally brainwashed, yet they don't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know. Here we have a young mother carrying her crying child on the back. The mother is smiling while reading a paper with headline, "The United States has collapsed." Now, she is on her moped wearing a Meituan t-shirt, meaning that she has taken up a delivery job at Meituan. You know, I don't know how to say that. There are many young people who can't find a job, but who take up these delivery jobs, delivering food and other things for people. But in the old days, there used to be, usually young men do this type of job. Now the economy has deteriorated so much, even women are taking those jobs. And in this case, a young mother. So it's heartbreaking, and yet she is reading the newspaper saying that the U.S. has collapsed. So this is a very sad picture, but it's true. All right. So Chris, if you could share with people the Halloween video, I hope people will enjoy that. Now, I want to tell you about a note I received from